This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, Game Jam 6 delights with Maregubbenes, the player-owned lodge, and chocolate brewing. We also discuss what Fletching may look like in Varlamore: The Final Dawn, December's Project Zanaris update, and the 2024 annual survey. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 59, recorded Friday, December 20th, 2024. Branching out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last regularly scheduled episode of Old School RuneScape Update for 2024. And, by regularly scheduled, we mean week to week. We do have plans for one episode over the Christmas break, but more on that a bit later. But Sirion is here as he is each and every week. Welcome aboard.
Yep.
Welcome aboard the HMS OSRS update as we chart the seas towards sailing in 2025 or maybe 2026 after last week's episode. Happy? Mm-hmm. Okay. I just had to ask. After that. But, of course, if you're joining us for the first time, what we do here is we discuss the week's RuneScape updates, old school RuneScape updates, and with that also give a bit of a flavor injection, I guess, on what's going on in the community. And this week, of course, we have Game Jam. We have the announcement of what the new Fletching activity in Varlamore is going to look like. An update on Project Zanaris for December, and of course the 2024 annual survey, which you should all do. But in the meantime,
it's amazing how last week we were like, oh, let's leave the Game Jam for next week. It's going to be a quiet week, and it gives us something to talk about. And like they just kept dropping news post after news post today, and we're like, why aren't they going on Christmas vacation yet?
This is going to be a long show, folks. Maybe. It might be. But nonetheless, if you want to follow along, show notes can be found over at update.show/OS. We're also on all the podcast listening services out there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google. And you know what they say, like and subscribe. That's the best way to get the show each and every week at youtube.com/@OSRS update.
And it does really help.
It does, as does your engagement, too. That's actually almost more important than the like and subscribe, if I'm being honest. Just, letting us know that you're out there and commenting, whether it be, on YouTube or in the Discord or what have you for that. But we've been wondering where the Game Jam post was. And, this happened at the end of November, and the mods were oddly quiet on social media and Reddit when this was happening, and we were wondering, what was going to be teased for this. But now we have some ideas. And how would you pronounce this name? The
Maregubbenes.
Oh wow, the non-English speaker, better pronunciation. Non-native English speaker. Maregubbenes Hall, a skilling and PVM boss. They haven't really combined these before, have they?
Well, they have, I think we've talked about this before. It must have been a year ago at this point, because we talked about this in the context of the Gauntlet.
Oh, right, when I was there doing that.
And I think I have probably talked before about how I kind of like this idea of you being put in an environment, you start with nothing, and you sort of have to build up your gear and your own thing to defeat the boss. Like this is also fundamentally what dungeoneering is.
I was just gonna say that, because that rears its head in the survey, which we'll get to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting. I think this is a very risky idea. This is definitely very innovative and very fresh. But I really like the idea of this. The problem you have with skilling bosses is, and you see this with the changes they made to Winter Toad like a while ago, you it's really hard to give them the same sense of danger and the same level of stakes.
Yeah.
And I think this solves that in a really uh, elegant way by basically just splitting it in half. By instead of making it a skilling boss, you're making it a boss in which skiller play a certain role. And I can really see this work. And to me, this is also, I mean, it's something you can also do in some of the raids, right? Like in the Chambers of Xeric, you can, make your own potions and all of that. And this, to me, is sort of a fresh look and sort of a more dressed down version of that to really focus on that mechanic and the interaction. I could see this work.
Yeah, and it's also I think when you look at it, if you bring an MMO down to its bare principles of, journeying through a forest as an example, and you find a strange cave and you wonder what's going to be in there. If you're just an adventuring party, you're not necessarily going to be, kitted up to go and kill something straight off. You're going to have the skillers and the PVMers with you, and, let's just say you're flying by the seat of your pants. That is the way you would approach that in such a thing. I just want to read the elevator pitch here, and very thankful they included that. It says, this content aims to create a mutualistic activity for PVMers and skillers to play together to defeat this nightmare troll. Skillers focus on supply and demand, while the PVMers provide new materials while fending off the Maregubben until dawn so that the leader can sleep peacefully. The content offers a bridge between the two playstyles in early to mid-game.
I'm gonna be honest, right? Like the whole idea here of like crafting and fletching your own armor, this pitch is more exciting to me than the entire Varlamore fletching pitch.
Okay. Well,
yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But and also the element of there's that they want to put some element of rhythm in there as well. From what they say, like a rhythmic experience. I really, really enjoy that. It like some of the most interesting mechanics now in the game, like in PVM, are the ones where you need to sort of get in a rhythm. It's like it's the clone attack from the Eclipse Moon and the flinching at the Blood Moon, and it's the the walking with a Moxley Haddo, like all of that sort of rhythmic feel. It's really nice because you can sort of get in a rhythm and really get into the game, and just the time will take away very quickly. And it seems that that's what they're focusing on here. So to me, this is a recipe that has a lot of ingredients that I like. I have no idea how it will all come together, but I really hope that they will go further on this, because this sounds cool and the art looks awesome.
All right.
I think this is my favorite idea from the list. So we're starting off strong here.
Yeah, I just have two things to say on it. I'm glad that one of the big things with this will be that you're able to get your own gear and create your own gear and whatnot inside the boss encounter, because that's really good, especially for that early to mid level, because you don't know if you're necessarily going to have what you're going to need to take that down. So, like you mentioned, Gauntlet, obviously at an entirely different level, I think that's a good step. But one sentiment I've seen in the community at various points this year is that it feels like there's aspects of the community that are done with this early to mid-level type of content, and they want stuff that's higher level with that. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a bad thing should it come into game. I just think it's going to need a very impressive pitch and reward structure to get the bulk of the community on board, if that segment of the population is going to be loud about this.
Maybe, but nowhere here says this needs to be a mid-level piece of content, right?
Well, it kind of does. It says a consistent bridge between the two playstyles in early to mid-game.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. The only problem I think with that sentiment that we need more high-level stuff is that if you look at the Inferno, And if you look at the Colosseum, there's still really damn hard pieces of content that are not quite attainable for every single player in the game because there's not actually that much power creep happening. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not actually that much. So it's not that content is becoming easier. And the question is, they have done Inferno now. They have done Colosseum. What can they still do that is still a challenge? That's not a different combination of those mechanics.
Yeah, and
I think there is much less to gain at that point.
Yeah, and I like what you said about there not being too much power creep because the textbook definition I go to for that, best in slot Magic Cape presently from Mage Arena 2. So
yeah.
Next up is
but I get it, and I do hope actually that we do get some more higher level content next year, and I hope Varlamore Batch 3 is the vessel for that.
Yeah, it would make sense being the conclusion. So
yes.
Next one is something I'm very happy about and something I like, and this is the player-owned lodge and fragrant harvest mini game. And to me it comes down to a couple of things with this one. I'm just going to take it from the surface level here. One, I love the visual design of the map square that we're seeing here. I also like aspects of the lodge in particular. I don't talk about it much, but I'm a farming aficionado, so there's potentially going to be different amenities you can reconstruct, including tree planting spots, as well as skilling locations for mining, wood cutting, fishing, and crafting, and as well a player-operated sawmill.
Yeah.
Did you know that's why I was going to like this one?
No, but I'm gonna maybe sort of dampen your excitement about this with that. This content is clearly built with sailing in mind. Even in the map square, you see it's a sailing port attachment point. It does in the GIF. You see that they use the new log tiers that they are introducing as part of sailing. So this is definitely part of the sailing update. So how does that make you feel?
Fine. Fine. I'm not. I mean,
is that a real fine, or is that a fine while my eye is twitching? Fine?
No, it's a real fine because I mean the issue I have with sailing we talked about last week. It's mainly the part of being at sea that I have an issue with, whereas what I see here is just content surrounding other skills.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's normal fine.
Okay.
But there's also the fragrant harvest aspect of this, and this is going to be about the care and craft of tea making. And that's
it's
pretty
does
much all the
seem
details we have right now.
Yeah, I mean that is chill. I do like, especially if you look at the wider games industry, the whole cozy game, trend is really kicking off.
Oh, maybe that's why I like it.
Yeah, like I do think this could fit in there, and it sounds sort of fun and interesting in that respect. I don't know if we need more player-owned things.
Hey, just imagine the sequel to this is like RimWorld, where it's all nice on the surface, then you start harvesting people's kidneys.
Oh my goodness. That being said, this might be an interesting expansion to like this might be an interesting mix between construction and what we saw with the museum camp, right? Like in a museum camp, you build your own facilities. It's just, you just do it because it's fairly low level. I would love for this to be a place where, you can at some point build the farming patch on this island with like a high construction level, or you can even choose what skill facilities you want, and there's only a few hotspots. I could definitely see this becoming more of a sort of an expansion towards like based on how useful the POH is right now, but making it more overworld present.
Yeah,
and make this like the overworld version of a player-owned house with the same level of utility.
Fulfill Andrew's dream of POH housing on the surface world.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
There's also pink graceful rewards potentially with this. cherry blossom tangleroot, and a blossom spirit tree that you can plant in your house as potential rewards from this.
Love that spirit tree.
Yeah, see? It's all within the cozy game elements of it. We also have the Slayer Monster Smorgasbord, Mage Prison, Monk and Demon, and Armored Troll. They're new Slayer
I think these are good
monsters.
mechanics. Yeah, I like these opt-in Slayer mechanics quite a lot. I especially like the Armored Troll one, where it's like you first need to use Crush, and then when the shield is gone, you switch to Slash. That, sounds like an interesting reward for someone who wants to do a little bit more effort on Slayer training. Well, you can opt out, which I think is important, by just taking a stab weapon and just standing there and stabbing trolls to death.
Yeah,
that's the right balance, and I think I don't know if these are the right designs, but I do like the underlying concept and ideas.
Yep. Sanguimancy, which is basically blood magic. Right?
Yeah, I think we're not the right persons to talk about this, because we haven't really done much Mauritania stuff, and this seems to be related to blood shards.
Right.
Which I think you use to make more blood runes. The comments will probably tell me if I'm wrong.
And see, that's the fun bit, folks. We haven't done the Mauritania quests aside from Priest in Peril, Nature Spirit,
Altered Mine,
and the pirate ones. So.
And pirate ones, yeah.
That's on the to-do list for the new year.
Absolutely.
The King Kayet, a hunter crafting skilling boss.
I'm always on board with more hunter content. Like, I like hunter rumors. No, I mean,
yeah, I know. I just have to say yes. Let's have this be the winter toad for hunter, please, because look how many people chose Animal Wrangler in leagues.
Yeah.
And look how many people are training their hunter with Varlamore.
Yeah, no, I think
it's kind of an annoying skill.
It is. I don't think it's too bad. It's fairly slow. I would love for there to be a little bit of variation. I don't want this to be the winter toad where you always go and do this. More the temporos, where it's at least like an option.
Okay.
But I do like it. I think it's fun. Hunter is really popping off in the past year. I think it's really it always was a little bit of a weird skill.
What have we got aside from the rumors?
Well, not much, but I'm seeing this, and like the Animal Wrangler stuff. I think in general, slowly we are sort of rebuilding. Like what Varlamore also introduced is hunter meats.
Right. For those different kind of foods.
Exactly. So we're really starting to see hunter becoming a fully fledged alternative.
Fully fledged.
Yeah. A full-fledged alternative that's oh my god, it's late.
You mean fledged?
A full-fledged alternative to fishing, right? With its own activities, its own sources of materials, and all of that. And it's probably even surpassing fishing now, to be honest.
And that's interesting, because Mod Mark, in one of his year-enders a couple years ago, said that he absolutely hates the skill and wishes it could be deleted from both games.
I get that, but I think they're going in the right direction with it. I don't mind it so much, and yeah, I don't know. I'd rather have this than Big Chin. Like, that's the distraction, the version they added for.
You're right.
In RS3
You're right.
Hunter.
You're right.
It is.
You're right.
It is go beyond belief.
You're right. 100% right. And I think that the issue with that is that primarily dailies and distractions and diversions like that breed a necessity to go back whenever it's off cooldown and do. I think that's the clinching
Yeah.
there, where he's skilling bosses opt in. But one thing that is hopefully not going to be opt in is cocoa trees and chocolate brewing. Yes, please, farming, more farming stuff.
I like all of this. I just like I think the farming and herblore part of the game is one of the best designed parts of the game.
It's
and the
very
ecosystem.
fleshed out. But I mean, come on, it's one tree.
My worry, no, I do like it. I just don't think it should be a separate patch type. That's the
Okay.
only thing. I think we already have too many snowflake farming patches that you need to worry about. And I'd rather, like, I love hot peppers allotment patch. Like, yes, please. Let's get more things on existing patches. That I do love and I do like.
Yeah.
Especially, let's make
Okay.
hops patches useful. For
Yeah,
example.
that's fair. That's fair. And earlier this year, I was doing a bit of experimenting with a custom GPT for having it recommend methods of training skills in old school with various hook-ins to the RS Wiki and Wise Old Man. And one thing it consistently got confused about with farming is what trees went in what patch.
Yeah.
So that would just add more to that. The issue.
Yeah, I like here you have the hot peppers in allotment patches, the vanilla orchid in the flower patch. Like that to me, great I kind of think that the cocoa bean should just be fruit trees.
Yeah. Okay.
That I would be okay with. I think we already have a little bit too much. We have the Celestis tree, redwood tree. We have the calcret tree, and then we have like 2 cactus patches, and we have hardwood patches in some places. Like to me, it all starts becoming a bit of a mess.
They're talking also with this about adding something called the Garden of Ralos within the Talati rainforest, so there's more sailing content for you.
That's not sailing, right?
Is it?
The Talati rainforest is part of Varlamore Batch 3.
Oh. Okay. Oops.
And I think, I mean, it's okay, right? Like, you could just say that this is just like the grapes area in Alcidius, and you really only use it for that specific thing and not much outside of it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about adding more different patches. But all of the other stuff, yes, please.
Including chocolate brewing and your favorite thing of corn syrup, right?
Yeah. I love corn syrup.
He loves his high fructose corn syrup whenever he comes to North America.
But how do you folks just live on that? My entire digestive system just gives up.
Well, you know what the shock is when you go to something that is not corn syrup based, and it's like, holy crap, this is actually good.
Mm-hmm.
But here we're dealing with also spicy cocoa liquor, which is a very interesting mix of chocolate paste, Haralander, corn syrup, and chili powders. It would grant 10 energy per sip and provide 30% reduction to energy drain. And then there's sweet cocoa liquor.
Yeah. Have you never had like spicy chocolate?
No.
Oh, I have. It's a really interesting sensation.
Okay. Okay. The mounted trophy rework. You are a fan of the POH typically. How do you feel about this one?
I think it's good. I mean, it seems like it makes it a little bit easier to switch out trophies. I like it. That's not the biggest part that I liked, like the trophy stuff. But hey, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Then we get to miscellaneous bits and bobs, including an update for the Holy Wrench that flattens its bonuses based on prayer level. Or a more complex option which involves devout points, which you first drink a dose of prayer potion and you gain devout points equal to 40% of prayer points restored and capped at 1 dose worth of points. And then when a prayer is active and you have devout points stored up, you have a 50% chance to avoid prayer points from draining, and each time a prayer point would drain, you lose a devout point. I'm just going to stop there. Do the first option.
Yeah, it feels very complex this way. I sort of understand what they're going for here. It's like, but
it's like banking up prayer points, basically.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sheep Herder AI fix. Oh, sorry.
Oh yes, please.
Anybody who's done that knows that that's an immediate yes.
Yeah.
And
Moving
and then a rare loot table and black steel ingots. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, Game Jam, we don't necessarily know how many of these are going to see the light of day, but you know what my favorites are. Both the player-owned lodge and fragrant harvest, plus the farming stuff. How about you?
Maregubbenes Hall.
Alrighty. Well, fingers crossed those see the light of day and work their way into the game. And another thing that they're talking about maybe adding into the game with Varlamore Part 3, The Final Dawn, is a fletching activity. Okay. You're kind of lukewarm on this. Do you want to just dive into this here, and you can tell us why or how you feel?
I don't know how to feel about it. I read this and it isn't resonating with me for I mean more than one reason, I think. The first reason is like the rewards, none of the rewards, with the exception of the enhanced hunter traps.
Sure.
Doesn't really, feel like it will really change things a lot.
Yeah. So
I think it kind of shows how limited fletching is. Like it's really just a branch of crafting, if you think about it.
Haha, a branch because you're using wood.
Oh my god. That was not it. That was not intended. But yeah, no.
Okay, I was looking at this in a vacuum, and I had warmer thoughts about it.
Like, just the activity itself. I read it and it sounds like a hassle. And if you think about like existing fletching training methods, there's zero time if you want to be a little bit sweaty and do it during agility. Or they're just sitting in a bank and working through your, like, it's basically just the same as Herblore, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree that with mastering mixology, they made a more engaging model for Herblore. It works. This seems like it's a little bit more of a pain, and I think the XP rates would need to be really competitive for me to consider this, and for people who normally do zero time training to consider this.
Yeah, and like the things this reminds me of is if you combine birdhouses, RuneScape 3's Overgrown Idols, and RuneScape 3's monthly construction scaffolding D&D, you combine those together, maybe. This kind of sounds like what we have a bit with this, where you build something and then the locals come by, admire it, and you get the XP.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I feel that fletching needs something a little bit more akin to the Giants Foundry. Like, not literally copy it. Obviously, you want to make sure it's unique and doesn't just feel like a carbon copy of another skill. But I think that's kind of where you want to go. Like, the whole idea was that it would be a way to sacrifice your used materials, like Giants Foundry does, and they decided that you can just hang like an unstrung bow and just stick it in your totem, and now it's extra decoration. Like, to me, it doesn't, like, I'm firmly of the belief that if a piece of content is good, it feels like everything clicks together. And this design doesn't, and it feels a little bit clunky.
The thing that comes to mind for me on this is that and I asked you this in pre-show, what do we have in Fletching that is useful that you can't get in PVM?
Nothing.
Right. Exactly. Or from a monster drop.
Nothing.
So maybe that's the issue, is that this doesn't add to Fletching.
But isn't that the same problem? Isn't that the same problem with smithing?
I guess, yeah.
But smithing is less is at least, in my opinion, less problematic than fletching at this point. Maybe it's exclusively because of Giant's Foundry. Maybe it is because at least smithing is necessary to repair some items, like make yourself a Dragonfire shield or a zombie axe or what have you, and fletching less so. It's usually crafting at that point.
Yeah.
But
there's also the crafting tie-in for Crystal Singing. Crafting and smithing tie-in for that.
Yeah.
Which we know how powerful those weapons and tools are.
And this doesn't really solve any of that. It only really gives you a way to get through those levels faster, which I think is unfortunate. And that's why I was saying that Game Jam project where you actually have to use fletching to make armor and ammo in the moment, because you don't have access to the monster drops that give you the good stuff. Like, that's way more interesting to me than this. So
yeah.
I don't know. Look, I'm gonna trust them on this because I know Mastering Mixology worked out fine. And like all of their other scaling activities are typically quite good.
Well,
but
did
like
it
said,
though? I mean, look how many fixes it needed in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And credit to them, they were able to act quick and make those changes because they were mostly just tweaking numbers. So, okay, I get where you're coming from with this. I think it still sounds like a fun idea.
I mean, maybe it also makes me think a little bit too much of that Herbie Werby activity in RS3, which I absolutely despise.
This is nothing like that. This is
I know, but it's also like little ends, or well, zygomites in that case, running around. So
yeah, I've been going there.
I don't know. I think the rewards need work. They are just not exciting to me. Like access to an extra Slayer area out of a fletching activity. I mean,
that's a little bit odd.
New kinds of darts. I mean, that's like, I think that's the angle they need to take, right? I think they need to actually build rewards that are useful for PVM that are not available to PVM, right? Like, I think the idea I gave when we talked about this sort of a few days ago over text is like bow attachments. Like, imagine the idea that you can, and this is going to start sounding like invention. I'm going to get shut down immediately. But
no, it's warding without warding.
Imagine the idea of being able to add like a scope. I don't know. It's a really stupid idea, maybe, but add a scope to your bow, and now you can increase the range by 1 or 2 tiles. I can see niche cases where that's really helpful and relevant.
Yeah.
Right? Or something that I mean, I don't want to increase like attack speed because that's powerful, but
that's where I went.
But you could have something increase like your max damage by just 1 or 2, which is fairly significant if you add it all up.
You know what I'd like to see if we're talking attachments for weapons? Raise the minimum hit by a certain number and lower the maximum hit by that same amount.
Yeah, look, equilibrium in that case you get, right? Things like that I think are a little bit more interesting than and could come out of fletching. I think you need to stretch the definition of the skill a little bit, but
right, and we need to realize that that's the world we live in, where if you are, relatively high level in terms of ranged, you are using an armadillo crossbow or Zarek crossbow or a twisted bow or whatever the other bow is. The bofa. You're using bofa or twisted bow on that end, and you have to realize that there's nothing in Fletching for the ultra high tier that you can make with the skill. So maybe a weapon add-on is the way to go.
I think, one of the best pieces of Fletching content is still the gem tip bolts. They're used all the way up. They're still used. They're like they're meta in so many cases. Do something like that for arrows.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of stuff you could do. Or really lean into, the hunter aspect here.
Make arrows great again. Oh, that's the same. Yeah. That's the same acronym as. Oh, oops.
Yeah. But and that's, like I said, that's the other thing I really like. Really lean into making Fletching a support skill for hunter. I could also see that happen. And integrate a little bit with that. I mean, we know that Varlamore is already fairly heavily hunter themed, so.
So the sense I'm getting is that this is mainly a reward problem.
Maybe. I don't know what I feel about. I don't know. Like totems, carving, counting the number of monsters. I don't know. I think the biggest draw for me to this activity is if I put on my Iron Man lens. And I'm like, oh, great. I don't have to now gather literally millions of magic logs to train my... or spend a lot of GP on broad bolts and find my way to a lot of feathers, right? Like, that's the main advantage I see here. But I don't know. This is one where I need to stew on it. I kind of need to see more.
Or maybe just play it.
But there's also like this little downtime while running between your totem sites. Perfect time to do some fletching on the go. And like, I don't like this is my main problem I have with Giants Foundry, right? I really like the content, like the idea of it, but it's slightly too engaging that I can't really do other things at the same time because you miss like something and your sword is ruined.
I was trying to carry on a text message chat when I was in there the other day on Leagues, and I couldn't.
Exactly. Well, at the same time, it's just dull. It's too dull to be continuously engaged because you're just sitting there waiting for a bar to fill up. And I'm a little bit worried that this falls into that category too much, and maybe even more so if like, oh, in the middle you kind of need to do glass blowing or alking. And like, I kind of just want to have an activity where I can train fletching, period.
Okay.
So
I see where you're coming from on that. I still think it sounds interesting, but we'll have to see. I think this just comes down to the balance and the rewards at the end. I think that's what's going to make it or break it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. So we also have this other thing that's been, just bopping around in the background a bit here and there. And, this was also mentioned in the survey, so we'll talk about it now. But we got the December update for Project Zanaris. And this was where I'm like, oh, crap, this show is going to be a long one. But I have to say, I feel slightly better about this after this post.
What specifically made you change your mind?
The clarity about how they see it working alongside. Well, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I haven't changed my mind yet. I still think I'd like to see an additional content team rather than a Project Zanaris team. So there's that.
Yeah.
But I feel slightly better because of how they specifically outlined about how this will work alongside old school and what this would mean for leagues in particular and other game modes like Tedman. Because the thing that I had in mind is that, let's just say somebody makes a game mode that is effectively, permanent trailblazer. Right?
I mean, I
What,
I
what
don't think you have to make that an if. I think it's a when.
right. So with that, I was
think
thinking like,
not even
well,
that.
what does that mean for leagues, and what does that mean, for just this Project Zanaris sitting next to the game world, right? And they basically said is that Leagues 5 Raging Echoes is a smashing success, yada, yada, yada. The developers are going to continue iterating on Leagues and keep effectively, I think what I read into this is they're going to be, they're going to keep coming up with new things year after year on this. But the sense I get is that they're going to still ensure that the magic and the spark behind things like Leagues and Deadman remains the same, and that nothing in Zanaris will effectively overshadow the main game. At least that's what I read into that, and that makes me feel a little bit better. But I wouldn't say I've completely changed my mind, no.
Well, I think the way to think about this is that one of the main things that makes leagues successful, I believe, is the community effect.
Yeah.
I don't think leagues would be as much fun if it wasn't something that what they say here is like 50,000 people doing it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I tentatively agree. I don't like if some person came up with like their own version of Trailblazer. This brings me back to actual private service.
Yeah.
I was a little bit of a rebel back in the day, and I did play on
private
service of some MMOs. Yeah, I did. And it started getting boring really quickly.
Yeah, and the thing that I have in mind with this is basically, you take something like a modded Minecraft world with electricity and automation and all that, and once you have that and once you build everything that's in the mod pack, there's nothing left for you to do in that world.
Yeah, and to me, like these new worlds would need to come with new challenges. Like I was skeptical of yearly leagues, and yeah, it seems to be working okay for them, and I'm having a good time. But doing leagues all the time, I don't know. I think there will still be some. I think there would still be something special about the leagues that Jagex organizes. I think what they put in this post is correct, and it's like I'm not afraid for Project Zanaris for like the reasons of it's gonna split up the community into like a million different pieces, because I don't think that any of these Project Zanaris servers will have the weight and the community to really become relevant and alive for a very long time.
You say that, but that's how old school started.
No, it was official, right?
No, but I mean, it was that community push.
Do you think that there's going to be a community push that says, "Oh, we don't like what Jagex is doing. We're going to make our own thing"?
If they do something silly enough,
and you believe that there will be a critical mass to actually take away from old school, I think that's a ridiculous fear. I like.
It's happened before.
No, it's not. It wasn't over. Like, do you truly think that RS3 would be as small as it is if old school didn't exist?
No.
I'm not gonna say that RS3 would be as big as old school is today. I don't believe that, right? But I also don't think that like in a sense old school did cannibalize on RS3.
It did. It did. And that's what I say.
But
I think
at the same time, right? Well, I forgot, I lost my entire train of thought here.
You're talking about the cannibalization, and
I was like, my point is, I do think that Jagex actively caused the success of old school here by pushing for it.
Oh, they most definitely did. I remember that. I remember those 3 weeks.
Because we had this poll with these different thresholds, and
yeah,
the threshold we hit wasn't actually
what we got.
New content updates. It was really only maintenance mode, right? And they actively chose to maintain it more than it did. And I mean, what group out there has the capability of maintaining the level of old school updates? You need to build an entire company around it, and you probably couldn't because
the
Project
tools are going to
Zanaris,
be way more limited.
The tools are going to be way more limited, and you need to realize that it's not that you get like the code and you can just host your own version.
Oh no,
right?
no,
Jagex is still in control of the engine.
Yeah,
and still in control of where it's hosted, and they still make money of it. So I don't see us getting a massive split of the community, realistically.
So what's your big issue with it then?
It's the opposite. It's that everybody looks at it and they play around with it for a year and then they're kind of done with it.
Okay, so it's more of an investment kind of thing then.
Yeah.
Okay. I know people who primarily play on private servers and only come back for leagues. And I think, if we're talking about a business decision here, perhaps Jagex sees the analytics on that and knows that there's a portion of the market that they can entice to come back and have people, curate a few servers here and there for those types of people who would typically play on private servers if they just want, like boosted XP rates or a specific region lock. And if they can entice those people to come back, it's better to have those people playing under the Jagex banner than some private server. And maybe that's and this is what we said on launch, or not on launch day, and when it was first announced, is that maybe there's some story behind this that we don't know, and there's just a huge deluge of people that are going to fit into that mold, plus content creators, obviously, I think.
There's always this big push against microtransactions. And the fact that microtransactions are currently becoming so big and important is not across the board, it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, and to be fair, you know this because you've looked at the mobile and just general games market.
Yes.
So
the main reason that microtransactions are such a big source of income right now, and that we are also seeing a shift in the type of games all of the time, is that the first generation of gamers, which are people around our age, when they started playing as kids, they had a lot of time. Making very grindy and slow games was fine because they would spend 8 hours with a bag of crisps and a glass of Coke as the only, nutrients for the day, right? No, but that was a thing back in the day.
And that's what old school is designed and built around to a degree.
These people they grew up, but then now people in their 30s and maybe even 40s,
parents
have jobs,
in some cases,
families,
they
are parents, they don't have time to spend on hundreds of hours of grinding, but they do have money, and
that's what RS3 does with Treasure Hunter.
Exactly. Is it really bad from that perspective to let these people pay with the currency they do have, which in this case is hard currency, actual money, rather than the currency they used to have, which is time, right? They're just trading one currency for another. The problem with old school is you can't do microtransactions because of that, the community is sort of, it is so up. It's such an emotional topic. You can't really introduce that.
Yeah.
However, the idea of private servers is considered maybe a little bit more socially accepted, especially because these paid for accounts are kept separate from, the hard earned real accounts. But it still allows these people who have money to
play old
throw
school.
money at Jagex to get their own server where they can give themselves basically max stats and actually try out the high level PVM that they've always wanted
you know
to try,
what?
because that's what they're interested in.
You know what? I would probably play on a Zanaris server if you gave me 4 to 6x combat XP rates and 4 to 6x damage, and you removed 0 hit splats with that, and kept everything else the same. I don't necessarily know that I'd, sink a huge amount of time into it, but it's definitely something, that I'd put a couple of months membership into.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if I had the time and interest, I would consider having a crack at designing my own relics, because that sounds like a lot of fun, right? And then maybe hold like a tiny leagues competition for a clan. I could see that being fun.
Yeah, and on that, they're talking about the amount of choice they can give, in particular with things like region locking, that, that's something they could initially just copy over from leagues. But their ultimate goal of something that they'd really like to do in terms of region locking is just to give you a map in the server setup thing that allows you to effectively turn on or off specific map squares. So if you wanted to, in theory, you could have a game that's just played in Falador.
Yeah. Look, I think this is also, it will really help the content creator space to do even crazier things. Right now, we see the level of creativity. So, like, one of the series going on right now is Settled, who is playing a game mode called Nightmare Mode. And Nightmare Mode is basically a game mode that is an Iron Man account, not an Ultimate Iron Man account, a hardcore Iron Man account that has only 1 hit point. The way this is implemented is this is a RuneLight plugin on top of the existing game that just, hides the actual hit points level, and any damage you take, it destroys the account by deleting the password of it, which is stored in a file. So it's kind of but it shows what you can do if you give the power to the users. Imagine that you can build this game mode into your actual Project Zanaris. So I can see it. They will come back to the point you said earlier, which is I'd rather have another content team than this. But at the same time, I can see why, from a business sense, why it is important to find more ways of extracting money from old school players. And if I had to pick between Project Zanaris and microtransactions,
you know which one I'd pick.
I mean, I understand, but I like the idea that stuff is opt-in, and it feels, when it comes to microtransactions, it always feels like it needs to be advertised to you, whereas in Project Zanaris, it's an explicit choice for you to engage with that part of the community.
You have moved me from you have moved me from 70-30 no on this to 50-50.
It's not even my intention.
Because no, it's fine, because I really like the idea of having the option for Jagex to make more money with old school.
That's really what it comes down to, and that's good for all of us.
Because I like you, I don't see, like, I know there's tons of people who play old school as members, but we're moving away. I know we're moving away from that subscription style of gaming to that more ad hoc microtransaction method. And I think the community would hit the roof if microtransactions, even cosmetic, were probably added to the game.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I think that, there's ways that they could, blunt that a bit or, ease it in slowly over time. But I do share your concerns as well about, maybe this would be better to have another content team on this instead. But speaking of content, we have the 2024 annual survey. These are always important to do, folks. So make sure you set aside around a half hour to do this. Fill it in honestly and wholeheartedly, because this is going to, on aggregate, inform what way the old school team goes in 2025. I did this. I have a myriad of thoughts about this. I'm glad they asked about sailing in terms of, how excited we are to play content like that when it inevitably arrives in 25 or 26, probably.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things they ask about, like temporary holiday events, competitive game modes, new areas, new mini games, graphical reworks, quest sequels, new training methods for existing skills, and of course new skills as well. And maybe that was one of the most interesting questions they asked, was in terms of new skills, in terms of whether they should bring over something like dungeoneering or summoning from RS3.
Yeah, that was surprised me. And as much as I like some of the RS3 content, I think
you could do...
my answers in that section were pretty clearly in the direction of, just do your own thing, because I think that's the content where I think old school shines.
Yeah, whereas I was kind of the opposite on that. I said they should look for inspiration on skills like summoning or dungeoneering, stealing creation or fistigathics, and the two reasons for that is that those are both forms of PvP that were incredibly popular, and I think would serve as a way to kind of just be a more generalistic kind of PvP for people who don't want to fully engage with the wilderness or something like that. So that was that one. And skill updates, specifically the mining and smithing rework they're asking about again. Which we talked about this on the League's Theory Crafting episode. That's primarily why I chose the Power Miner relic for Tier 1, is that I just can't stand mining, and mainly mining in old school. So we also have questions that were asked about when it comes to priority in terms of what you would like to see certain things, like reviewing gameplay and rewards of minigames, new combat foes, bosses, whether it be elite PVM or mid-level PVM. Interestingly enough, they're asking about that again. They also asked about updating the tutorial and early game experience in the survey, which I think is weird, because I don't think you should be asking existing players about your tutorial and early onboarding.
No, probably not.
No. I found this interesting, too, given the fact that we had the combat part of Project Rebalance this year, reviewing the power of existing armor and weapons.
I think that should be an ongoing effort.
Yeah. I mean, it went off remarkably well, I think, and credit to the people out there listening on YouTube. Most of you guys started listening around Project Rebalance time, so maybe we said something there that you liked. New areas to explore. I'm just picking from the grab bag here, but I think two of the things that you and I both agreed on heavily was continuing incomplete storylines.
Yep.
And updating the graphics of existing areas.
Yeah, I love the style of the Isle of Souls, and would love that to see it applied to more places. And I've been spending time on Current, of course, because that's one of my league's regions, and like the difference between the south half of it, the Shasian and Hosidius area, which they both look absolutely gorgeous, compared to Lovaking. I mean, it makes no sense. Like, there's a pit with a stickman in it burning.
Which one are you saying it looks better?
The south.
Okay, fair.
So, and because they were graphically reworked. And I think they should continue that work. And I think I would love to see existing areas of the game also get a little bit of love. And it doesn't have to go to the extent that RS3 has done with area reworks, but I think it is overdue.
Yeah.
Because it makes such a difference, I feel, in what area of the world.
Yeah, and I need to say that I cannot wait for HD mode to come out when that does.
Yeah, it's funny because in a sense I also said, would making the game have more graphical fidelity make me more likely to play the game? And actually, no, it wouldn't. I kind of think there's a certain timelessness to the current graphics, and I don't want it to move away from that. But I think some of the new areas have shown what you can do with the existing.
No, and I'm talking to one of our friends of our community who actually works as an environment designer, and he's absolutely in awe with what Old School has done. And the interesting part about that is he works with professional game engines at the end of the day, making ultra photorealistic like settings for his job, right? But when it comes to looking at something like you mentioned, like the Isle of Souls and the new Varlamore stuff and areas of Corund, he sees that graphical identity and thinks that Jagex has really hit that out of the park with that. So, and that's coming from somebody who's a professional environment designer outside of Jagex on that. And I think you can improve the graphical fidelity of OS without abandoning that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll have to see, what comes with the HD mode. I've seen some things that looks really gorgeous, but at the same time, I think the cartoonishness has a certain gives a certain. It has style. It's a style. It's an actual. Yeah.
Let's talk about group content.
Yeah,
I get it. Let's talk about group content because that's another interesting thing that was here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't like. One of the questions was everything should be soloable, which I disagree with.
I agree with that because I know there's going to be times where people might just want to, in effect, work their way through a piece of content. And if that's, something that has something good at the end of it that you want, but you don't have a group for it, I think you should be able to get through it. But another interesting thing that was on this part of the group content section was that should there be more content added that is soloable but in a group, like Moon's Apparel, and absolutely 100% yes on that.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
What did you say the sweet spot was for the number of people in a group?
4.
Okay, I said 3.
It was between 3 or 4 for me, but some of the most fun I've had in RS3 is Croesus.
until he refused to give us any drops for an entire year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why we started questing on Old School.
Yes.
Only part of that is true, folks. Only part of that is true. What did you get to the point where they asked about what quest lines you'd like to see continued? Or did you not get that far yet in here?
I did not get that far yet. I
Okay.
did not get that far.
So the options are Majoran, Elemental Workshop, Fairy Tale, Corund, Gnome, Monkey, Temple Knight, Camelot, Dragonkin, Myrek, Desert, Pirate, and Penguin. Do you want
Desert.
Okay. Do you want to try and guess my top three?
Your top three. I mean,
Yes.
Elemental Workshop is going to be in there.
Yeah, that's it. That's in the top three.
No, you're more into all of this bullshit 6th-stage stuff. So I'm pretty sure you have either Dragonkin or Majorat in there.
Majorat's number one.
Yeah.
Elemental Workshop's number two. What's my number three? It's a bit of a wild card.
Not penguins, I think. I can't
Not
see
penguin.
it being penguins. No, not. Don't think it's any of the Mauritania stuff. No.
It's the fairies. You can see that, right?
In there? Is gnomes in there as an option?
Yeah, gnomes I put at 5.
Oh yeah, that would be my top one, I think.
I went Majorat, Workshop, Fairy Tale, Corund, Gnome, Temple Knight, Camelot, Dragonkin, Myrek, Desert, Pirate, Penguin.
Interesting. I think mine would have Desert up there. I really enjoy the Amoscut storyline, actually. I think it's really interesting. I think penguins are up there. I got soured on it with the direction that RS3 took it, but it's just such a...
There's opportunity in old school because there's only one Penguin quest.
Exactly. Same with Elemental Workshop. I loved, do it right this time, basically. With Elemental Workshop 3, I think,
They kind of went overboard with that one, I will say.
Yeah.
Before he left Jagex, Mod Doctor apparently had the blueprints done for up to Elemental Workshop 7.
Oh my goodness. I would have loved that.
You got to wonder if that kind of stays with Jagex or if that's just something that he had in a file that's lost to time.
Even then, you don't really pick that up with someone else. You want to give something.
Have them have their own stamp on it. That's kind of what happened with the Elf series, mind you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the elves. It's really a wild card. I hadn't expected that. For me, I've never really liked them, but you like farming, so I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. My question is, how can you my sense is that things like the gnomes, for example, have reached enough of a conclusion with Monkey Madness too.
No.
Well, they say gnome/monkey.
God. I mean, yes, the monkey part, yes, but Arposandra, man.
Okay, right. I remember our discussions about an Arposandra dig site.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I think this is the last question I want to discuss. They were asking about, again, what plugins are critical to you and your experienced old school RuneScape.
Menu entry swapper?
Yes, that is an option to put there, and I put that as somewhat important for me.
Which, by the way, apparently with their mobile client updates the other day, they completely broke.
Oh no!
On mobile.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Or do you know if were they able to revert that? I
haven't actually played on mobile a lot lately, but apparently a bunch of people had the problem where the left click option on people was replaced with follow. And you couldn't walk. Yeah, and things like that. So don't quote me on this. I got this I never experienced this myself, but apparently there were a little bit there were a few options.
Wow. Okay.
And in general, I find that the options at times just get reset or forgotten. So the mobile first the native version of Manual Entry Swapper on mobile is definitely not great.
Yeah, and that's my sense with the usability of it as well. But options here are bank tabs, quest helper, NPC highlights, buff indicators and timers, Discord sync, fairy ring codes, true tiles, metronome, inventory and charge counters, wiki sync, entity hider, and clue solver.
Interesting.
So, that's why it's important you go do the survey, folks, because there's also all sorts of questions in there about polling. There's also questions in there about upcoming content. There's questions in there about how you feel about interacting with your fellow community members, whether you like them or you don't, whether you find toxicity in game, all sorts of things like that. There's options for you to put all that and air any grievances that you might have with Jagex, or pat them on the back, or tell them what kind of content you want in the next year.
One of the things I found interesting is my own answers to some of these questions. I've definitely, and even the last few weeks in leagues have really changed my opinion on some content. Like, I've been doing a lot of PVM, and I always said I dislike PVM, and I definitely don't like all PVM, but it's changing.
So I guess that's something I need to do too.
So I think that's also interesting about these surveys, like how your own answers change from year to year.
It'd be nice if they gave you an option to save your responses, and get like a printout of everything you put in. Because I took some screenshots of my questions and whatnot throughout the entire thing of what I wanted to talk about here on the show, but we're not going to have that for next year, obviously. But that's pretty much it for the year. We do have a year in review show coming next week, which is going to be good fun because we can actually do that this year. Because last year we started the show in October, so it really didn't make much sense to do a year in review for that. But we can definitely do that this year. And oh boy, what a year it's been, both for old school and for us.
Oh yes, there's so many things. I probably, if I look at younger me playing old school like a year ago, I'd be like, what the heck is this person talking about?
Yeah, just wait till you fast forward a year and you're doing raids.
I
won't be doing that, but you will. Maybe. But we'll see where we land with all that for a year in review. And then after that, we got a couple weeks off for both the Christmas break and your early January vacation and the presumed first update of the year on the 15th of January. So with that brings us back to regularly scheduled OS update episodes on January 19th. So thank you, everybody, for being with us for this year. If you don't listen to the Year in Review show, it's been quite the year for us. We wish you a very Merry Christmas and all the best over the holiday season, and look forward to, just having a good podcast catch-up couple of weeks, listening to the Year in Review show, and finishing whatever you're up to in leagues. That's been us for OSRS Update, and we'll see you next week for our Year in Review. See you next week, everyone. Take care.
Bye.